Technological arrogance. Grand Admiral Merrick stood at the observation deck of the flagship Eternal Dominance, his four slender arms folded behind his back as he studied the holographic projection of the blue-green planet designated Sol 3, the planet the natives called Earth. His crimson exoskeleton gleamed under the soft violet lighting of the bridge as his compound eyes processed the tactical data streaming across multiple displays. Primitive. He chittered, mandibles clicking in what his species, the Vesperi, considered amusement. Absolutely primitive. Fleet Commander Zexra approached, her movements precise and efficient as befitting the second-in-command of the Crimson Dominion's 7th Expansion Fleet. "The intelligence reports are complete, Grand Admiral," she announced, transferring data to the central holodeble. "Their military capabilities are quaint." The holodeble expanded to show various human weapon systems. Tanks, aircraft carriers, fighter jets, and missile systems rotated slowly in the projection. The bridge officers gathered around, their collective chittering growing louder, the Vesperi equivalent of laughter. "They still use chemical propellants," observed Weapons Officer Trax, his voice carrying notes of disbelief. "And solid metal projectiles. Their most advanced fighter jets can't even achieve escape velocity." Merrick's focused on one particular image, a heavy ground vehicle the humans call the M1 Abrams main battle tank. "And this," he said, enlarging the image, "appears to be their primary ground combat vehicle. It moves on continuous metal bands, burns fossil fuels, and fires metal projectiles using chemical explosions. Technology we abandoned 7 millennia ago." The laughter grew more pronounced. "They haven't even developed basic gravitics or particle weapons," Zexra noted, scrolling through more data. "Their communication systems still rely primarily on electromagnetic radiation. Their defensive capabilities are negligible against our plasma arrays." Merrick's felt almost disappointed. The Crimson Dominion had conquered 12 solar systems in the past decade alone, but most had put up at least some form of challenge. Some had even forced tactical retreats before their inevitable capitulation. But this planet, with technology centuries, perhaps millennia, behind the galactic standard, it hardly seems sporting. "Their political structure is fragmented," Strategic Officer Velna added, bringing up a map showing Earth's nations. "No unified planetary government. They still organize by geographical regions and maintain separate military forces. Some have formed alliances, but there's no cohesive command structure." Merrick's nodded, having expected as much. Newly spacefaring species typically hadn't achieved planetary unification. It made them easy targets. "What's truly fascinating," Science Officer Nexel interjected, "is that they've managed to advance this far without destroying themselves. Their history is riddled with constant warfare. They've been fighting each other continuously for their entire recorded history." That gave Merrick's pause. He tapped a claw against his mandible thoughtfully. "Constant warfare, you say? So they have combat experience?" "Yes, but with primitive weapons," Zexra dismissed. "Nothing that could possibly prepare them for plasma cannons or neutron disruptors." Merrick's nodded, satisfied with her assessment. "Prepare the invasion plan. Standard protocol. We'll establish orbital superiority, neutralize their command and control centers, then deploy ground forces to secure key resources and population centers." "Should we offer terms of surrender first?" asked Diplomatic Officer Jackson, though the question seemed perfunctory. "Let's observe protocol," Merrick's replied. "Send the standard surrender package once we enter their system. Give them the customary 12 rotations to respond, though I doubt they'll understand the gravity of their situation until we begin orbital bombardment." The preparations continued for the next several cycles. The 7th Expansion Fleet, consisting of 1 dreadnought, 4 cruisers, 8 destroyers, and 16 frigates, approached the Sol system with confidence bordering on nonchalance. Standard formation, minimal defensive screens activated. The humans didn't even have orbital defense platforms. This would be, as humans might say, a walk in the park. As predicted, Earth's governments responded to the arrival of the Crimson Dominion fleet with panic and disorganization. Some nations launched nuclear missiles, which the fleet's defense systems neutralized with contemptuous ease. Others attempted to establish communication, broadcasting messages of peace and cooperation on every frequency they could access. Merrick's ignored them all. The surrender deadline passed, and the invasion began as planned. The first phase went exactly as expected. Orbital bombardment neutralized key military installations, power grids, and communication hubs. Human aircraft that attempted to respond were swatted from the sky by automated defense systems. The Dominion didn't even bother deploying their own fighters. It was unnecessary. Ground forces landed in strategic locations across the planet, primarily the landmass humans called North America, which housed some of their most advanced military capabilities. The Vesperi expected minimal resistance. They deployed light infantry units with basic support vehicles, more than sufficient according to their tactical assessments. That's when things started to go wrong. Battle Group Alpha, assigned to secure a region called Fort Hood in a territory designated Texas, reported unexpected casualties within hours of deployment. Grand Admiral Zexra called from her station, her tone betraying confusion. Battle Group Alpha is reporting significant losses. Merrick's looked up from the strategic overview, his compound eyes narrowing. That's impossible. What are they facing? Human armor divisions, Zexra replied, reviewing the incoming data. Those primitive tanks we observed. The M1 Abrams units. How many? Unclear, sir. Communications are being disrupted somehow. Merrick's chittered in irritation. Boost the signal. Get me visual. The holodeble flickered, then displayed chaotic footage from ground units. What Merrick saw defied his understanding. The human tanks were moving with astonishing coordination, using terrain features for cover, firing from positions of concealment, then relocating before Dominion forces could effectively target them. They're using some sort of advanced tactical doctrine, Zexra observed, her professional demeanor returning despite her surprise. Look at their movement patterns. They're perfectly coordinated. But their technology is inferior, Merrick's insisted, watching as another Dominion light armor vehicle erupted in flames after a direct hit from an Abrams main gun. Their projectile weapons shouldn't be penetrating our armor. Science Officer Nexel joined them at the holodeble, analyzing the combat footage. It appears they're using depleted uranium penetrators with remarkable precision, and our light infantry units weren't deployed with full energy shielding. We deemed it unnecessary. Merrick slammed a clawed hand on the table. Adjust tactics. Deploy heavy armor and activate all defensive systems. But the situation was deteriorating rapidly. Battle Group Beta, landing near a region called Fort Benning, reported similar resistance. Human armor units were somehow neutralizing Dominion air support, using weapons that didn't appear in the initial intelligence assessment. They've been hiding their capabilities, Zexra realized aloud, or our intelligence was incomplete. Impossible, Merrick's hissed. We monitored their global communications for a full cycle before invasion. We saw everything they had. Nexel's voice was quiet but reached Merrick's clearly. Perhaps not everything, sir. These humans have a concept they call classified. They deliberately keep their most advanced systems out of standard communications channels. Merrick's felt the first stirrings of genuine concern. He had led 12 successful planetary conquests, but none had started like this. Deploy the Havoc battalions, he ordered. The Havoc battalions were elite Vesperi shock troops equipped with the most advanced armor and weapons in the Dominion arsenal. They were typically reserved for subjugating particularly resistant species. Using them against humans seemed excessive, but Merrick's wanted to quash this unexpected resistance quickly. 6 hours later, the Havoc battalions reported heavy casualties. The holodeble now displayed footage from multiple battlefronts around the planet. Human forces had absorbed the initial orbital bombardment and were now counterattacking with surprising effectiveness. Their tanks, not just the Abrams, but various models, were demonstrating combat capabilities far beyond what their technological level should permit. They're adapting to our tactics in real time. Tactical Officer Vrex noted with professional appreciation. Look at this engagement in the region they called Germany. The human forces took heavy losses in the first exchange, but within hours, they'd adjusted their approach and are now effectively countering our standard maneuvers. Merrick's watched as a column of Dominion hover tanks was systematically destroyed by concealed human armored units. The humans were using the dense forest terrain masterfully, appearing just long enough to fire devastatingly accurate shots before disappearing again. This isn't just about technology, Zexra said quietly. They fight differently. Nexel called up more historical data. Sir, I've been analyzing their military history. These humans have been perfecting ground warfare for thousands of years. While we focused on energy weapons and space combat, they've been fighting each other on the ground, refining tactics, strategies, and doctrines over centuries. Merrick stared at the mounting casualty reports coming in from across the planet. The 7th Expansion Fleet had never suffered such losses in the initial phase of an invasion. Their weapons may be primitive, Zexra said, but their warriors are not. The crushing reality. Brigadier General Maya Rodriguez stood in the underground command center beneath the Pentagon, surrounded by the combined Joint Chiefs of Staff and military leaders from NATO allies. The room hummed with tense energy as data streams from around the world displayed the ongoing conflict with the alien invaders. The Abrams battalions are performing beyond expectations, reported General Weichen, pointing to footage from the Texas front. The 4th Armored Division has destroyed over 60 alien vehicles in the past 12 hours. Their light armor can't withstand depleted uranium penetrators. Rodriguez nodded, studying the tactical display. And the Paladin artillery units. Effective when we can get targeting solutions, replied British General Emma Harrington. The aliens have air superiority, but our ground-based air defense networks are adapting to their flight patterns. Every engagement teaches us more about their capabilities. Colonel Jackson, head of Special Operations Command, stepped forward. Ma'am, SOCTUM units have successfully captured 3 alien technology specimens, what appears to be their equivalent of portable computing devices, a small weapons system, and components from a downed light aircraft. Get them to DRPA immediately, Rodriguez ordered. Priority Alpha. I want our engineers reverse engineering anything useful within hours, not days. The alien invasion had begun 36 hours earlier. The initial orbital bombardment had been devastating, destroying key military installations, power infrastructure, and communication networks. But decades of Cold War preparation and more recent counterterrorism hardening had created redundancies in command and control systems. The U.S. military, alongside its allies, had absorbed the first blow and was now responding with everything at their disposal. What about the prototype electromagnetic pulse systems? Rodriguez asked, turning to Dr. Eliza Kenner, the civilian DRPA representative. Ready for deployment, General, Kenner replied. The targeted EMP weapons have been loaded onto mobile platforms and distributed to key battle zones. Initial testing suggests they may disrupt the aliens' energy weapon systems, at least temporarily. Rodriguez nodded. Humanity was outmatched technologically, but they were quickly learning to exploit weaknesses in the alien systems. The invaders clearly hadn't expected significant resistance. Their tactics were sloppy, overconfident. Their command and control appears centralized, noted Air Force General Thomas Reyes. They rely heavily on directions from their orbital vessels. If we could disrupt that communication, we're working on it, Dr. Kenner assured him. The aliens use some form of quantum entanglement for instantaneous communication, but there's still an electromagnetic component we might be able to jam. Rodriguez straightened, addressing the entire room. Listen up. We're fighting an enemy with superior technology, but they're making a critical mistake. They're underestimating us. Every hour we survive teaches us more about their capabilities and limitations. Every engagement reveals weaknesses we can exploit. We need to capitalize on our advantages. Knowledge of terrain, tactical flexibility, and combat experience. The command center erupted in focused activity as new orders were distributed to fighting forces worldwide. The human resistance was coalescing into a coordinated global defense, something the alien invaders had clearly not anticipated from a primitive species. Aboard the Eternal Dominance, Grand Admiral Merrickx faced a situation unprecedented in his long military career. 3 full planetary rotations into what should have been a routine conquest, and human resistance was not only continuing but intensifying. Battle Group Delta has gone completely dark, reported Zexra, her professional demeanor strained by the mounting disasters. Last transmission indicated they were facing some kind of electromagnetic attack that disabled their systems before they could engage defensive countermeasures. The humans are deploying new weapons, Nexel observed, analyzing incoming data, technologies that weren't in our initial assessment. They appear to be specifically designed to counter our systems. Impossible, Merrickx hissed. They couldn't develop countermeasures this quickly. Unless, Tactical Officer Vrex suggested hesitantly, they already had technologies in development that coincidentally work against our systems, or perhaps they're repurposing existing technologies in ways we didn't anticipate. Merrickx paced the bridge, his exoskeleton clicking against the metallic floor. The invasion was falling apart. 8 landing zones had been overrun by human counterattacks. 3 more were under heavy assault. The Dominion forces still held orbital superiority, but even that was being challenged. The humans had begun launching new types of missiles that, while primitive, were proving difficult to track and intercept due to their unconventional propulsion systems. We need to reassess, Zexra stated firmly. The standard conquest protocol isn't working. These humans fight differently than any species we've encountered. Merrickx stopped pacing, his compound eyes studying the tactical display, showing human tank formations executing complex maneuvers to encircle Dominion ground forces. Different how? He demanded. They're adaptable, Nexel explained. Most species we've conquered relied on technological advantages or overwhelming numbers. The humans have neither against us, yet they're maximizing the effectiveness of their primitive weapons through superior tactics and battlefield innovations. And they seem to operate effectively even when their command structures are disrupted, added Zexra. Their units continue fighting cohesively even when isolated. Vrex highlighted footage from multiple battlefronts. Observe their armor units. They're using terrain features masterfully, coordinating fire and movement in patterns our tactical computers can't predict, and their infantry support is integrated seamlessly. They fight as unified combined arms teams. Merrickx watched as human tanks, those supposedly primitive M1 Abrams units, executed a perfect flanking maneuver against a Dominion position. The tanks fired from hull-down positions, then repositioned before Dominion counter-battery fire could target them. It was textbook maneuver warfare, executed with precision that belied their technological limitations. They're not just soldiers, Merrickx realized aloud. They're warriors. A shudder ran through the flagship as something impacted the hull. What was that? Merrickx demanded. Unknown projectile, reported Defense Systems Officer Crix. It penetrated our outer defensive screens before we could track it. Another impact, stronger this time. Shields holding at 82%. Crix reported, his voice tight with tension. But I'm detecting multiple launches from the planet's surface. These aren't like their previous missiles. They're using some kind of stealth technology that our sensors struggle to detect. Merrickx turned to Science Officer Nexel. Explain this. How are they launching weapons that can threaten a Dominion dreadnought? Nexel studied the incoming data, his movements betraying growing concern. They appear to be using primitive nuclear warheads, but with delivery systems that incorporate materials that absorb our scanning frequencies. And they're approaching from multiple vectors simultaneously, overwhelming our point defense systems. The bridge rocked again as another missile detonated against their shields. Shields at 73%, Crix reported. Merrickx made a decision. Pull back to high orbit. Recall all ground forces immediately. Sir, Zexra questioned, though her tone suggested she agreed with the order. This isn't a conquest anymore, Commander. It's becoming a war of attrition, one we weren't prepared to fight. We need to regroup and reassess. As the Dominion fleet pulled back from Earth's immediate orbit, human forces on the ground pressed their advantage. The aliens' retreat was chaotic, nothing like the disciplined military machine that had arrived so confidently days earlier. In the Pentagon Command Center, General Rodriguez watched the alien ships ascending beyond the atmosphere. They're pulling back, observed General Chen. Do we pursue with our remaining aerospace assets? Rodriguez shook her head. No, let them go. We've bloodied their nose, but we can't match them in orbit. Not yet. She turned to Dr. Kenner. How soon can your team adapt the captured alien technology to our weapon systems? We're making progress, Kenner replied. Their power systems are unlike anything we've seen, but the principles are understandable. Given a few weeks, we might be able to incorporate elements of their shield technology into our existing platforms. They'll be back, Rodriguez said firmly. This wasn't a full retreat. It's a tactical withdrawal. They're regrouping, reassessing. Next time, they won't underestimate us. Colonel Jackson nodded grimly. Next time, they'll bring their full military might to bear. No more light infantry and support vehicles. They'll deploy their equivalent of heavy armor and close air support. Then we better be ready, Rodriguez replied. Humanity has one advantage they don't. We've been fighting wars for our entire history. We know how to adapt, how to overcome technological disadvantages, how to find weaknesses in seemingly superior opponents. She looked around the room at the assembled military leaders. Get every tank, every aircraft, every ship we still have operational ready for round 2. And let's make sure our new alien friends remember what they learned today. Humanity doesn't surrender, no matter the odds. In high Earth orbit, Grand Admiral Merrick stood alone on the observation deck of the Eternal Dominance, watching the blue-green planet rotate slowly beneath him. His mandibles clicked rhythmically as he processed the day's events. You underestimated them, came Zexra's voice from behind him. We all did, Merrick replied without turning. Their technology is primitive, but they're warriors. He paused, searching for the right words. Their warriors are formidable beyond measure. The Dominion Council won't be pleased, Zexra noted. They expected Earth to be cataloged as a conquered world by now. Merrick finally turned to face his second-in-command. The Council hasn't faced human tanks in ground combat. I have a new appreciation for these primitives. What will you tell the Council? Merrick's compound eyes gleamed with newfound respect as he gazed back at Earth. I will tell them that we discovered something rare in this galaxy, a species who mastered the art of war before they mastered the stars. Their weapons may be primitive, but their warriors are among the most dangerous we've ever encountered. Zexra nodded slowly. And your recommendation for Earth? Merrick chittered softly, a sound that, among the Vesperi, indicated profound respect. Approach with caution, he said. Very, very high caution.